Bridgwater AGM, Trade Council. My name is Ben Kane, I'm Chairman for tonight. Dave Chappell is Secretary, and we've got Barbara Jack. We're all here first to listen to Barbara speak about the Orgreave campaign, Truth and Justice campaign. Okay, later on we're going to have questions and comments, people have got comments. For those who don't know about unions, right, if you can, when you want to speak, just raise your hand and I'll get to you, all right, and speak. But do not interrupt people, please, and try and speak to the chair, otherwise we'll have, okay? Other than that, we brought up, where's the thing I had? We had it somewhere. Right, we brought up the motion in the first place because, as everybody knows, Ms. Rudd decided there wasn't going to be a inquiry after the Hillsborough was a successful campaign. We had a lot of people in the community that didn't quite understand what Orgreave was about. I mean, it's quite a long time ago. I remember it vividly. It was an awful time. I mean, I think a politician said it was when the police rioted. I think it was Tristan Hunt. He's gone. So, yeah, so if I can introduce the Barb, I can't say, I assume most of you know all about Orgreave, that's a very youngsters. There was pickets trying to stop people scaffolding to work and protesting about conditions and losing their jobs, and the police were determined to let people through the gates. But what people didn't know is that they were going to attack them and try to give the miners a good hiding. Okay, that was what their aim was from the very start. Okay, so I would like to introduce Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. My name is Barbara Jackson. I'm Secretary of the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign, and thanks for inviting me here tonight, and thanks to Dave Chappell for organising all of this. He's done all the hard work along with Glenn and other people, and we've just had to turn up. We've come from Sheffield, and we were speaking in Bristol on Tuesday, Bath last night, and here tonight, and back home to Sheffield tomorrow. I was involved in the strike because I was working for the National Co-Board at the time, and I'd been interviewed by Dave at his house earlier on, and you know, I said to him, Dave, why don't you just play my tape recording of what I told you at the meeting tonight? But he wanted you to hear it from me. I was in the white collar section of the National Union of Mine Workers, and so I worked in a large regional office in Sheffield, and there were 9 of us from our office who stayed out on strike for the year and picketed our office every morning for 2 hours for a full year. So the strike is imprinted on me just as it is on any miner and their family. This campaign, the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign, started in Sheffield in the autumn of 2012, and I quickly became the secretary of it. It started because the Hillsborough campaigners had got the result of their independent panel hearing that completely exonerated the families and fans' version of events that happened at the Hillsborough football ground. I'll be talking quite a bit of geography, and I live in Sheffield, and Hillsborough is about 6 miles, that football ground, from where I live. And the Orgreave, we're talking here about the Orgreave coaching land, that is on the edge of Sheffield and Rotherham in South Yorkshire, and again, literally 5 or 6 miles away from where I live. So the result of that panel hearing and the hard work for, I think, about 25 years by the Hillsborough campaigners, and their version of truth was finally accepted. And we couldn't get a hearing about the miners' strike for 25 years easily. We were defeated industrially when the strike ended in March 1985. and then the coal industry, the deep mine coal industry, was totally run down, and the last deep mine pit closed at Kenningley in West Yorkshire in December 2015. So deep mining that ran through the whole landmass of the UK, from Scotland all down the central spine of the UK into Kent and Wales, is gone. The deep mine coal industry drove the industrial revolution in this country. We were able, with coal, to produce steel and iron. Prior to that, you were burning wood or charcoal or peat, and you can't drive industry by those fuels. So we all enjoy our comfortable lives, our relatively comfortable lives, being told constantly that we're the fourth, fifth, sixth, depending on what the day is, richest nation in the world. And that's being built on the back of miners getting coal out of the earth. But the Thatcher government, Margaret Thatcher's government, was determined to do two things: privatise loads of publicly owned industries, and coal was one of the major things that they wanted to privatise. And in order to achieve privatisation of the coal industry, the NUM, the National Union of Mine Workers, had to be defeated in their eyes. So the strike lasted a year, and in that year, every arm of the state was thrown at the striking miners and their families. So the arms of the state are the government, the judiciary, legal system, the media, the police force, and the social security system. Those operate above our heads, whichever government is in power, and they're called into being when people take collective action, and they're being successful at collective action. The strike started early in March 1984, and the events at Orgreave happened on the 18th of June 1984. The strike was about what is uneconomic. The Thatcher government declared that the deep mine coal industry was uneconomic, so therefore immediately 20 pits and 20,000 jobs had got to go. So the miners weren't prepared to be pieces on a chessboard, or were being told, you're finished, your industry is gone, you're finished, it's uneconomic, go, find work somewhere else. And so there was this huge discussion about what is economic, who says what is economic. There's numerous versions of what is economic. You know, what is in the social interest, what is in the economic interest. So the miners with their union stood up to that definition that was purely what is economic, and went on strike. So by the time we get to the 18th of June 1984, most of the pits in the country were on strike and people had stopped working. But coal was still needed in some industries, like the furnaces attached to the steel industry. And from Orgreave, where I live, on the edge of Sheffield and Rotherham, the coal went into the Orgreave coking plant, which was owned by British Steel, another state employer at the time, and it was turned into coke that was then sent to the British Steelworks at Scunthorpe. And the NUM wanted to make a major industry falter and stop working, so they were looking at trying to stop steel making. So the idea was to stop coal coming into the coking plant and stop coke coming out for the steel furnaces. There'd been an agreement that a certain amount of coal could go to steel furnaces just to keep them sufficiently warm, because if they get cool off, they collapse, and nobody wanted them to collapse. What they wanted them to do was to be maintained, but for them not to produce steel. So miners started picketing at Orgreave at the beginning of May in 1984. So by the time we get to the 18th of June, which is called the Battle for Orgreave by some people, miners had been picketing Orgreave already for 6 weeks and increasing in intensity and numbers. And the police had had enough. The government had had enough. And the cabinet papers that were released in 2014 clearly showed Margaret Thatcher and a very tiny inner group of politicians micromanaging the strike, but saying to you, the general public, we are not involved in this strike. We're not interfering in it. We've got no responsibility. It's an industrial dispute between the National Coal Board and the miners. The cabinet papers that were released in 2014 clearly show Margaret Thatcher annotating documents that showed her micromanaging the strike. And one of the issues that she was pressing for was the police to be more active on the miners' picket lines and get people charged and arrested and taken away from the picket line. Leon Britton was Home Secretary at the time, and she's having a conversation with him, words to the effect, you must stiffen the police's resolve to be more proactive on these picket lines. We need more people arrested. We need the magistrates' courts to speed up and get them through the judicial system to make an example to other miners and anybody or any other industry that's thinking of coming out in support, that this is what happens to you when you go on strike and you're being affected. You get the possibility of being arrested, charged, taken through the judiciary system, and maybe end up in prison. So that was the situation by the 18th of June. The country was 50% for the miners and 50% against. You couldn't sit on the fence about it. Nobody could. You were either for the strike or you were against it. So the police were increasingly getting the green light from the government to go in heavy on these picket lines. And a lot of the time, when miners went to picket round the pits, they couldn't get to pits because the police set up roadblocks and said, no, you're not going any further. There's the famous incident of the Kent miners getting to the Dartford Tunnel and being turned back on the grounds that they may cause a breach of the peace. Now, there are no pits at the Dartford Tunnel, but they couldn't proceed on to where pits were. They were turned back, and the country said, what is this? And some people said it's right that they should be turned back, and other people said they're infringing our right to strike and protest. So that was the atmosphere in the country. By the time we get to the 18th of June, there'd been a call from the NUN for a mass picket at Orgreave, and 5,000 or 6,000 miners responded from all over the country, and they were allowed to go to Orgreave. There were no roadblocks. There's photographs and films of the police escorting them off the motorway to this field at Orgreave. And at the end of that day, 95 miners had been arrested and charged with riot and unlawful assembly. Old charges that had laid on the statute book for years, and all of a sudden these major charges were instigated. Usually in a strike situation, if you come across the police, they might charge you with obstructing a police officer in their line of duty or trespassing, something quite minor. It was unheard of to be charged with riot and unlawful assembly. But at the end of this day, 95 of them had been arrested. And there were equal numbers of police officers there. 18 police forces from all over the country and from your area were there at Orgreave in equal numbers to miners. But South Yorkshire Police were in operational control on the day. geographically it was their area, so they were in operational control. The 95 miners who were arrested weren't brought to trial in Sheffield until a year later. So for a year they had to sit with the thought of that trial and potential life sentences that went with right and unlawful assembly hanging over them and hanging over their families. Within 6 weeks of the prosecution presenting their case in court, they threw in the towel. They said, we're not giving any further evidence. The police's evidence, both in video and written statements, didn't match up. Some of the evidence, the statements were fabricated. You got 2 arresting officers and sometimes they weren't corroborating each other, or sometimes they were corroborating each other so tightly that they could have only copied each other's statements. So it collapsed and the miners were said, go home. The first 15 of them had been brought to trial. It was the intention to bring them to trial in batches of 15. The other 80 never got to court because when the trial of the first 15 collapsed, there were no further trials. So millions of pounds were spent bringing people to trial and trying to defeat the miners, and that collapsed trial was swept under the carpet. And nobody was interested in what had happened or why it had happened. And no police officer or police force has ever been charged with misconduct in a public office, perjury or assault, battering miners with truncheons who were there on horseback with dogs and dressed in riot gear, full shields, visors, the lot. No police officer has ever been disciplined internally by their police force for actions at Orgreave. And so that is the background to that story, and that injustice has carried on, and that narrative about it was the miners who went there and the miners caused trouble and they were rioting. It wasn't, it was the police who'd been given the green light by the government. And unfortunately, on the BBC News that day, the 18th of June, the BBC reversed the footage. So they show the miners coming forward instead of the police charging without any provocation. And as you know, it's about who gets the story out first. And that's what happened at Hillsborough. Who got the story out first at Hillsborough about what was supposed to have happened on that football ground. And they're a hell of a narrative to turn around if the wrong narrative gets out into the public domain. But there was no interest for decades about doing anything like this until, as I say, we were given the motivation by the Hillsborough campaigners and their victory that we could possibly have a go at looking at Orgreave. So there were 10 of us one night got together in Sheffield and said, we'll take this on and see how far we can get with it. So that was 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago. And in that 4 years we've worked tremendously hard. We've driven this up to the top of the political agenda. We've had a couple of debates in Parliament, there's been debates in the House of Lords. Andy Burnham's been a tremendous help to the campaign, like he has with the Hillsborough campaign. The current leadership of the Labour Party are on board with this, and Jeremy Corbyn's on record saying that if he gets back into power at the next election, one of the first things he'd do on day one is launch an investigation into Orgreave. We've campaigned for 4 years for a full public inquiry. Because when you start years late, you've got to be bold and you've got to go for the big prize, a full public inquiry. So we met with Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, and we had 45 minutes with her. We took a 15-strong delegation in to meet her, MPs, campaigners, a couple of miners who'd been arrested at Orgreave, and National Union of Mine Workers officials. So we were a very impressive campaign, and we asked if she'd give us time to prepare written legal argument about why she should grant us a full public inquiry, and she agreed to do that. And while you're in the meeting with them, they love you and they manage you, because they don't know, you're unpredictable, you're ordinary people, and you're motivated to do all this work as volunteers. And so, you know, the meeting must be conducted in a certain, you know, atmosphere. So they love you while you're in the meeting with them. But once you've left that room, they start machinating and manoeuvring. Anyhow, it took us, with legal help, 5 months to produce our legal submission. It's been written by Gareth Pearce, some of you will know her, the famous campaigning solicitor, Henrietta Hill from Doughty Street Chambers, and Michael Mansfield, the famous barrister. It's full of legal argument, it's full of black and white photographs, some of which you'll have seen on the t-shirts and books at the back from the time. And it's full of testimonials from miners and the families. We think it's a very, very impressive document, and it was presented to Theresa May in December 2015 in the name of the campaign. So we own this document. We haven't written it, but we helped prepare it and edit it, and we've agreed that it's the document that we want. And Theresa May sat on this document for 6 months, and we kept saying, writing and saying, when are you going to make a decision? What's happening with it? And we kept getting holding emails back. Oh, I'll make a decision soon. It's a very impressive document, and I need time to do it justice. So fair enough, you do. We're pleased that you find it impressive. We think it's impressive. We're pleased that you want to do it justice and not make a quick decision and maybe dismiss it. But 6 months is too long. You're dragging it out. You're pushing it into the long grass. You're trying to grind us down and hope that we'll go away. Because during the 5 months that it took us to prepare this, they never came back to us and said, what's happening, where is it? Because they just hope that you'll go away and you won't deliver. So you've got to be a thorn in the side, and you've got to hang on there. But then Joe Cox got murdered, and then the EU referendum result, and you all know what happened then. Theresa May wasn't Home Secretary. She got appointed as our Prime Minister. And all of a sudden, Amber Rudd, a fairly unknown Tory party politician, was Home Secretary. And we were having to build a new relationship with the new Home Secretary, who was saying, oh dear, I need time to read this document. Can you give me time to read this document? So you all play the etiquette game where you pretend that Amber Rudd needs time to read this document. And as you know, your impression probably is like mine, that Theresa May is a very, very conscientious politician. There's no way she would have sat on this for 6 months without seeking legal advice on it, and without getting it condensed maybe to a couple of sides of A4 with legal advice. She could do this, she could do that. And we're fairly sure that that would be what she handed over to Amber Rudd. And under immense pressure from the Parliamentary Labour Party in Parliament, Amber Rudd stated that she would meet us, the campaigners. So we start all over again in September. But this time we have an hour with her. And she said, tell me why you want a full public inquiry. And we said, that's not why we've come. This tells you why we want a full public inquiry. We've come to find out when you're going to make a decision on it. And with great difficulty in that meeting, which was again 15 people strong, Michael Mansfield said to her, I don't understand, what is your problem about making a decision about this document? And I said to her, we just want you to be open and honest with us and just tell us what your decision is. And she said, well, I'll make a decision sometime in October, but at least by the 31st of October. So that was the result. We felt we couldn't leave that meeting without something concrete, because the media were waiting outside for us. We've had tremendous local and national media coverage, radio, TV, papers, and it's tremendously sympathetic to the campaign, unlike the hostility that the media showed to the miners during the strike. So we went out to the media and we think we're getting somewhere. We dare to believe, that's all we could say, we dare to believe that we're going to get somewhere. And we honestly thought that all they were struggling with is, what is the least we can give them that'll make it look as though we're doing something, but we're not going to give them absolutely what we want, what they want. So we waited and waited all through October until the very last day of October came, and is she going to do it, or is she going to say, I need more time? But 2 days after we met her in September, there was a leak from the Home Office. I don't know who, I don't know whether it was authorised, I don't know whether it was a flyer, let's fly this and see what the reaction is. It was in the papers that she was minded, this is the way they always phrase it, to grant us a full public inquiry. Theresa May's Home Office never leaked when she had it for 6 months. 2 days after we meet Amber Rudd, very positive meeting. Their private secretary emailed me later and said it was really nice to meet you and hear your stories and meet the campaigners. What a pleasure it was. Positive vibes. But when this leak went into the public domain about Amber Rudd was going to grant a full public inquiry, the famous Tory politician that some of you will remember, Norman Tebbit, popped his head up and just went straight back to 1984, 1985, the time of the strike, and said, there'll be no public inquiry. Why? Too much time's gone past. It's a waste of time, it'll be too expensive, it'll be this, it'll be that. It was a war, and we won, and they lost. It was as crude and as brutal as that. And he was urged on in that way of speaking by the papers, the right-wing papers, the Times, the Telegraph, the Mail and the Express. They all jumped on board, echoing in. And it was really destabilising for us as campaigners. We'd come out of that meeting with a thinking we were going to get somewhere. We're punching way above our weight. We've got no experience in managing a campaign that's got to this level of politics. We're volunteers working on it. We don't get paid. We're getting support from politicians, we're getting support from barristers, but at the end of the day, the decision making and the way forward is ours. So it was very destabilising for that reaction. Anyway, we got to the 31st of October and people from the campaign went down to Parliament because she was going to make an announcement in Parliament. She absolutely refused to work with the campaign by notifying us of the timing of the announcement. We said, we don't want to know the content of the announcement, but we'd like to know when it's going to happen. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And the tone during the 6 weeks that went from the positive meeting to the announcement just went down and down. And the emails were no longer positive or friendly. We were just literally, we'll get back to you. So the whole tone had changed. And be in no doubt that the right-wing press, the papers, are still very powerful. People think that people aren't reading newspapers as much anymore. And that is true, but they are still immensely powerful, because the paper headlines are then picked up by TV and radio, and they run them on the news, and they run them on all the discussion programmes. So if they get a catchy phrase in a newspaper, it's picked up by the other branches of the media. And so we got people gone down to Parliament to hear the decision. I stayed back in Sheffield, and I got a message that morning that she was going to ring me about 1:45, which she duly did. And it was just quite matter of fact and brutal. She said, Barbara, I want you to listen to me, and I don't want you to interrupt me until I finish. You'll get your chance to ask questions at the end. So she proceeded to read out to me what turned out to be a ministerial announcement that she was going to deliver in Parliament shortly. And I had no idea it was the main announcement. So she goes, blah, blah, it's nice to meet you, and pleased that you've presented us with this document. And I'm thinking, get on with it, get on with it. And she eventually did, and she said, there is going to be no time of investigation into what happened at Orgreave, and this is my reasoning. There were no deaths. So that's a very high bar to set now. The police can assault people with dogs, truncheons, on horseback, for defending their right to work and their industry. But so long as they don't kill you, that's okay. So if you get into trouble with the police now, we just joke about it, just say, what's your problem? There's no deaths. You know, that's what Amber Rudd says, it's okay, there's no deaths. She said there were no convictions, but that wasn't for want of trying by the state. The trial collapsed. They wanted to convict. They wanted to set an example. There was no miscarriages of justice. Well, what is a collapsed trial except a miscarriage of justice? And there are no new lessons for current police forces to learn by looking back at how you think the police behaved in these circumstances. We'll try telling that to people in South Yorkshire, because South Yorkshire police have got a terrible reputation. Orgreave, Hillsborough, Rotherham trial grooming scandal, and Rotherham 12 Asian men arrested for protesting about the EDL coming to Rotherham. They were took to trial last year, and that they were found not guilty. So the police force largely carry on as they always have done, trying to get away with as much as they can. And we're trying to hold them to account. So that was a tremendous blow to us, and we are now considering judicial review. And you've got a 3-month gap for judicial review from the day that she makes the announcement, 3 months, and that ends next Tuesday. And you can't say, oh, I don't like the decision, you should have made another decision. All you can ask for is that her decision-making process is reviewed, and you can question what documentation she looked at in order to come to the decision that she came to. So I don't know whether we're going for judicial review. We've certainly got to decide by next Tuesday. So we're working on that one. And in the meantime, Yvette Cooper, the Labour politician, is chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. They've taken up this issue as a low-level investigation for the Home Affairs Select Committee. And in writing letters to Amber Rudd, Yvette has managed to find out that the Home Office for 32 years have held on to 33 files about the miners' strike. They've never gone into the public archive. They've never been part of the Cabinet Papers release. So we can't find out what is in those files because they're still not in the public domain. But that is another avenue that we're working on for the future. And in the meantime, our Police and Crime Commissioner has employed a professional archivist for a year because South Yorkshire Police hold 60 boxes of evidence about Orgreave, and that evidence is video, photograph, statements, newspaper cuttings, and that has been continually in the last 4 years embargoed, but now it's back with South Yorkshire Police, that it's in a state that, you know, you can't hand it over to Sheffield Archive because you won't be able to make sense of it. So there is a professional archivist being employed to catalogue all of that and date it. So in a year's time, this campaign will have it, be able to get its hands on that evidence and see if there's anything crucial that comes out. Because when police manage big set piece, open air things, like a football match, there's an operational order of the day that they work to, and it can be as thick as that. And a football match is a planned event. It's some as thick as that. Yeah, sorry. And it's something that the police do regularly, managing football matches and crowds. And the operational order of the day for Hillsborough was found quite quickly. Nobody can find the operational order for Orgreave the 18th of June. Now, if there are 18 police forces there, they're all going to have copies, and I think that most of them have been shredded. And the operational order of the day says that group of police officers will stand there and report to X, and in the event of Y happening, they will do this. So the police know what they're doing on the day, supposedly. So it's about who planned this, who paid for it, who said it was okay to do it, and why has the false narrative remained in the public domain that it was the miners and were at fault at Orgreave. We're not wanting criminal convictions of police officers, because most of the senior police officers now will be dead. And we don't want low-level police officers who were probably 22, 23 at the time, who were just doing as they told, just foot soldiers to carry the camp for this. What we want is the truth out in the public domain. We know what happened, but our version of the truth, like the Hillsborough campaigners, is not good enough. Your version of the truth is never good enough until it's got a big tick by the establishment and they say, oh, finally, we can tell you what happened there. These men have never received an apology. They carry criminal records, because even though the trial collapsed, when you apply for a job, you're often CRB checked and asked, well, have you ever been arrested or charged with anything? Have you ever spent time in prison? And some of these men were on bail in prison. They didn't go to prison because the trial collapsed, but they spent time on bail in prison. And it affects you when you try for different types of insurances. You have to make a declaration. And so there's all these things, you know, that have hung over people for all these years. So just to draw it to a conclusion, people like Dave and other trades councils and Unite Community in your area, Bristol and Bath, have tweeted, sent emails, sent a motion into Amber Rudd saying, we think you need to look at this again. Because what a politician like Amber Rudd is looking for is how much interest is there out there amongst the general public. If I decide to do something, can I demonstrate it's going to be in the public interest? And she needs to be put under pressure to change her mind. And you'll find on our website there's a standard motion that you can draw and tinker about with and use and send to Amber Rudd. And the other thing that we're doing to make our presence felt is Monday the 13th of March, there's going to be a noise demonstration outside the Home Office. It's going to last for 2 hours between 2 and 4, and PCS Samba Band are going to be leading on that, providing the noise. And we're asking people to come along with whistles, blowers, pots and pans, however you like to make your noise, and be part of this noise demonstration outside the Home Office. Zaria Phillips Unite Community in, I don't know whether it's still your area, is wanting names because they can put on a free coach that will get you to the Home Office in London, whereas they seems to think you've got a better route to get to London rather than going to Bristol or Bath. But that is something that you can do, is beyond that street, Marsham Street, outside the Home Office, demonstrating your support for the campaign. And as ever, send a letter to your local paper. I know that Dave managed to get us a photograph into the Bridgwater Mercury recently. And in our area in South Yorkshire and Chesterfield, a lot of local councils have passed motions from the council saying, we think that's a dreadful decision that you've made and we want you to revisit it and have another look at it. And this is a photograph of us with councillors at North East Derbyshire when they did the same. So what you can do is buy some of our stuff, because that's how we raise money to run the campaign. Come down for the noise demonstration, write something to the press, get on their phone in on the radio, or pass a motion that then gets sent on to Amber Rudd. I feel that I've probably spoken far too long, but it's not a simple or an easy story to tell. So I'm happy to take any questions or anything that you want to say. Thank you.
We'll have a short question and everything, and we'll have a break. Andrew.
Okay. So this is really interesting what you said here about Orgreave. It's nice and clear. I realise the miners. So before British Rail, the government were under British Rail, weren't they? And then British Airways, they wanted to privatise those. The government tried to sabotage everything, and really, there's no reason why they've done these things. The government were wrong to do that, to kind of force people out of business. It was the same with Liverpool football, Hillsborough. The police were responsible for opening the gate, and after they blamed the fans, and that was quite disgraceful. Same with the miners. I think it's quite an impact really that this has happened. I just think it's interesting. It's not really a question, but just really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question, but first of all, am I right in remembering, and I think I am, that one of the real reasons that the police came on side so readily was because they were given a bloody amazing big pay rise.
Yeah.
Like something like 20% or something.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But the question I wanted to ask, and I haven't thought about it before, is, I mean, it was such an iconic event for so many of us during the miners' strike, and particularly the miners, but activists as well. I mean, the Labour Weekly picture at the back of the woman getting her head bashed in by the police. And I was sort of thinking, why was there no interest in taking it up? Why did it take so long? I'm not challenging, I'm just asking. Do you have any theory? Because it seems to me something which we, as in solidarity, should have taken up straight away after the miners' strike. Why didn't we, do you think?
Well, you've got an ongoing Tory government, and they were re-elected after the miners' strike, so that is almost a tick of approval for what you've done. And as you know, the Labour Party in the form of Neil Kinnock sat on the fence the whole year of the strike saying, I condemn violence on both sides. And he represented a mining constituency. He was brought up, in a mining area, and the miners really thought he'd let them down. They quite frankly thought that other trade unions had let them down by not joining. They were in a triple alliance with steel unions and railway unions, and the steel unions had already been defeated in their strikes that they'd had. in 82, 83. No coal moved by rail from Orgreave. It had to be moved by lorries during the strike. And around Leicester, no coal moved around by rail anymore. So there was some support from railway workers. But there was no real action called by the TUC. They found the whole strike a dreadful embarrassment to them, a challenge to the way they wanted to manage trade unionism. The miners' leaders at the time were not typical of trade union leaders. They were very class conscious, they were very political, they were very supportive of industrial action, and they wanted the whole table, not just crumbs from the table. So there was the disappointment in no TUC support. And then if you remember, during the strike, the miners' funds were sequestrated, so they got no money to run the union. And when everybody went back to work in March 85, the pit closure programme that they'd been fighting went ahead, and the union was trying to get the funds back. They were trying to stop the pit closure programme. They were trying to pleading with miners not to take redundancy, to remain in the industry and still fight for it. It was just a dreadful, dreadful time, and as I said, it split the country down the middle. And when I say that the miners and we who were on strike were lied to about the pit closure programme, you were lied to as well. And the cabinet papers that were released in 2014 show how deeply we were all lied to, and lied to in Parliament, etc., about we're not involved in this strike and we're not going to close the industry down. So there is a lot of political ignorance in this country. People just don't understand how the system works. So myriad reasons why people in general didn't grapple with it. A defeat of that magnitude is just psychologically and emotionally traumatising, and it proved to traumatise the trade union movement up until this day. There is a lack of confidence in taking collective industrial action. There's a lack of confidence that you can do anything to change things, and a lot of that stems from that defeat of miners.
Mr. Secretary?
I don't think it's just about Orgreave, it's about in the miners' strike, they were seen as the leaders of our movement. And therefore if you can defeat the miners, as was proved, you can defeat everybody. There's only 3 of us postmen, 4 postmen while I'm retired, and we've had so many strikes in Bridgwater, official and unofficial. Some have lasted 10 days, some have lasted 10 hours, some have lasted 10 minutes, and to be honest, we've won most of them, but there's a big, big difference. Firstly, although we get good publicity, because by and large, although we deliver your bills and your junk mail, we're still reasonably popular when we walk the streets, unless you tell me otherwise. But all the strikes in Bridgwater that we've won, we haven't been seen as the leaders of the working class movement, in the postal workers in general, and in Bridgwater in particular, haven't been seen the leaders, and therefore there's no need for the police to come to our strikes. We've never had a single copper, ever, come to our picket line, and we've had about 30 legal and illegal strikes in the last sort of 15 or 20 years, and we've won most of them. And so what I think is, I just wish every postal worker was here to hear the story of the miners, because the reason why the miners' strike, Barbara, and Orgreave shouldn't be forgotten by us, and why it's so great to have you come basically 300 miles to talk to 25 good people and a few more in Bristol and Bath, is that if we forget the miners' strike and if we forget Orgreave, then we forget that basically this is my personal opinion, and only if I could persuade all of the pretty militant postal workers that up to last month, I represented proudly for 30 years, could get them to understand, is that we're still expected to be well behaved in this country. It's still back in primary school, and the government and the people who run this country, including the big business people and MI5 and MI6, are there saying, you've got to be well behaved. You can go on strike, you can go on strike every now and again, but you've got to be well behaved. If you ain't well behaved and you start to threaten us, we'll get the boot boys out. And that's something we should never forget. That there's something very, very nasty and undemocratic about this country, which can always be pulled out if we challenge the system. We've never done that in Bridgwater. We caused a bloody nuisance, but that's all we've done, and that's the reason why the coppers haven't come down with batons under our picket line. They might have, they could have, but they never, because the miners were already being defeated.
I'd just like to, I'll come to you. I remember I was a shop steward at Southend when the mine strikes kicked off. I remember all the rows with, because I was a militant, obviously, with all the rows we had between each other in the workplace and wallpapers. But Tom Searle was and he was quite a right-wing sort of bloke. He was secretary, no, he was area in charge of our area, TNG. He had an office in Bridgwater. And I remember buckets of money, even though there was loads of rows and all the lies from the press, the collections we were taking in Bridgwater was just unbelievable. You know, just ordinary people with nothing were giving money to the miners, even though the press and everybody else did this massive great campaign. And that really, at the time, surprised me. Me and Tom Searle sat down and talked about it. I said, what the hell's going on? He said, it doesn't make sense. They'll still vote Tory. Yeah. There's always a big supporter. It's incredible. Okay, Kate first, then.
Yeah, I thought I recognised you from Sheffield.
Justice conference that you organised.
Oh, did you? I thought I recognised you from the National Tea Trade Council.
There as well.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
And what struck me with that was the links between Orgreave and Hillsborough and Shrewsbury and Stonehenge and loads of big incidents.
Yeah, Battle of the Ring.
And how all of those campaigns, for want of a better word, have all been sort of sat on and the lid kept on the pressure cooker. And it's, to my mind, it's really important that all of those things come out and we're discussed and investigated properly. And hopefully we can improve our society. I really don't agree with those actually that there's nothing to learn. I hope that all those campaign groups carry on working together and supporting each other, because I know they do. But for me, the reason that Orgreave is important, apart from what happens to the individuals, because I think that's important, is part of our history over 200 years. They've done it at various times. And Orgreave is just another one, and there will be another one more recently as well.
Yeah.
And if we don't fight that abuse of our political will, then we're still not going to get away. And it's not revolutionary or anything like that. It's just purely, if someone does something wrong, it needs to be explained.
I assume that at least your Labour MPs in your area are on your side. And I say assume because we have to. There is an element of uncertainty even with the Labour Party nowadays. How much real input has the Labour Party got in this issue, in the Orgreave issue?
Well, we're non-party political. We're dealing with the political issue, but we're non-party political. People who are active on our campaign are in political parties from Labour to the left and no political party. And that works for us, that we define ourselves as non-party political, but dealing with the political issue. They've been very late to come on board. Andy Burnham has been tremendous, and the tone has changed with Jeremy Corbyn you know, as leader. That made a definite difference. By no means do Labour MPs want to go back and look at this. A lot of Labour MPs, even if they represent...
Skinner is your local, one of your local MPs,
is
isn't
falls over. Dennis is fine, you know, but I don't want to be naming names of the ones that...
do. I mean, how are we going to get, you know, he well, especially when he was younger, portrayed himself as a very militant...
Dennis is still militant, but Dennis doesn't hold power within the Parliamentary Labour Party. You look at now who's in power in the Parliamentary Labour Party. When Ed Miliband was leader, I shared a platform with him at Hatfield Pit Club near Doncaster, and we got a commitment out of him that if he got into power, he would launch an investigation, but he didn't get into power. And a lot of them don't like dirtying their hands with issues like this. It wasn't his natural domain to be in this pit club, but he did it. But this Caroline, what's her name? Caroline? No, not Lucas. Flint, yeah. She represents the mining community. She's not come forward in any way to help us. Michael Duga, Barnsley, now represents the mining community. He's not come forward. We met him once and he got nothing to say to us. We've not come to end to ask him how we should run our campaign. We've gone to end to say, what can you do to help us? And all he wanted was a photo op for his website with us. Useless. And he spends his time now abusing Jeremy Corbyn. Dan Jarvis is very recently in Parliament and represents the Barnsley mining constituency without any background in mining. And he's slowly coming on board. It is not easy for them.
There's two more.
Yeah. I'd like to add something that I was secretly listening to the conversation on the phone that Barbara took from Amber Rudd. And it was very interesting that all the way through it she was emphasising things Barbara said, like the fact that there is no new learning for the police in an inquiry. What she very cleverly did there was avoid saying anything about truth or justice, which are the two key words in the campaign's name. And of course the Tories are very good with language, the politics of language, and shifting the discourse over into an issue about whether the police need modernising anymore or not is actually quite clever, because for the point I've made. But I think, given some of the comments just made about, you know, the feeling of lack of power that we have, and the lack of support in the population for various reasons, there is obviously still within the British psyche the notion of fair play, of integrity and doing right by people. And I think if we were to try and influence that discourse back into the key issues of truth and justice, there is some mileage to be gained there.
Okay, one more.
Yes, I really wanted to say that this is an absolutely fantastic campaign, and I hope that it runs and runs, and I hope that it gets the justice that it deserves.
Hear it.
But the reason that I think it's so important is this. In order to try and defeat the working class, to make us think that we can't achieve justice, we are made to think about incidents, as it were, pieces of history becoming closed. And I thought about it last year when we were marking the 100th anniversary of the general strike. And the message was, you failed. But it didn't fail. It did fail in its immediate goals. Yes, it did. But it changed working class struggle forever. And I think the miners' strike The message is there. It was defeated, but it changed the potential, because from Orgreave, it went on another 9 months, that struggle. People ran their families into the ground, and working people across Britain knew and backed the miners. And I think what is happening now is that it is going to be pushed down, because what they want us to believe is that we are defeated, and that the current of history, that what we learn, the strength from each event, from every single struggle as it builds, will never get us anywhere. And brothers and sisters, it's wrong. We have every possibility, but only if we believe in ourselves. And I think this campaign is just superb for demonstrating that we can do that together.
Next break, everybody. 10.
Jenny.
Bedtime.